Hello, everyone. We are back. This is the final week of the Plant Powered Challenge. How are you all feeling? Would love to hear in the chat. You've been at this for a few weeks now. Anything that's changed for you, improvements, anything you've learned that you've enjoyed hearing about? We had over 3,000 people sign up for this year's Plant Powered Challenge, and it's so exciting to see everybody joining the various programming. Um, and today we are here with Bettina Jones. She's a registered dietitian nutritionist with Corewell Health. Bettina has earned her master's in dietetics from Grand Valley State University, where she specializes in cardiovascular rehabilitation. Since graduating, she has worked in a variety of capacities, including food sustainability, project management, cardiovascular rehabilitation, creating educational content, and coordinating farm to school lunch programs. Her passion for plant based eating was fueled by her own 20-year journey, learning the impact of our eating habits on the immediate and long term health. Vocationally, she finds her greatest joy helping people make sustainable changes that move them towards a healthy lifestyle. Outside of work, you can find Bettina out on the waters. Maybe not though now, maybe not this time of year,
No.
but in the summer, exploring Michigan with her family. Bettina, we're so glad to have you here today. Thank you, and I'm going to kick it over to you.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us today to talk about a topic I am passionate about, heart health. On our journey today, we will explore the most up-to-date information the American Heart Association has published, as well as evidence-based ways that we can improve our cardiovascular health. Every year, the American Heart Association, in conjunction with the National Institute of Health, reports the most up-to-date statistics related to heart disease, stroke, and cardiovascular risk factors, including poor health behaviors and health factors that contribute to cardiovascular health. The latest report was just published last week, January 27th, 2025, and these are some of the findings. 48.6% of adults have cardiovascular disease. 70% of major cardiovascular disease events in the US were attributable to low and moderate cardiovascular health. How do we measure and improve cardiovascular health is what we are going to talk about today. These core health behaviors and health factors that contribute to our cardiovascular health are known as life's essential 8. They include diet, physical activity, nicotine exposure, sleep health, BMI or weight, blood lipids, glucose, and blood pressure. For an individual to have ideal cardiovascular health overall, they must not have any clinical manifestations of cardiovascular disease and also have optimal levels of all the health components, including not smoking, healthy dietary pattern, significant physical activity, normal body weight, normal levels of total cholesterol, blood pressure, and fasting plasma glucose in the absence of medication. This means, for example, being able to maintain a normal blood pressure without medication. The Nurses' Health Study showed that for every increase in the Life Essential 8 score, there were lower odds of cardiovascular disease. According to the authors, 2 million major cardiovascular disease events could potentially be prevented each year if all US adults attained high cardiovascular health scores. Well, that's a lot, I know. But how about this? If adults with low scores just improve to moderate level, that could lead to a reduction of 1.2 million major cardiovascular disease events annually. Want to know how to accomplish this? Well, let's look at each category. The first health behavior we will discuss is nutrition. What we eat is the #1 risk factor for chronic disease and is the leading cause of death globally. By making improvements here, we will affect the other factors. Programs like this 30-day plant-powered challenge help us find new ways to reduce risk for obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and some cancers by improving our eating patterns. The standard American diet, or the SAD diet, is far from optimal, or even having a slant toward plants. It is proven to be the driver of most of our country's diet-related chronic diseases. It's characterized by being high in calories, added sugars, saturated fats, processed foods, and red meats. It's unhealthy and unsustainable. In other words, it's unsustainable for both the people and our planet. In regard to personal health, ultra-processed food-like substances are calorie-dense, high in sodium, and deficient in micronutrients. Our bodies over time have trouble regulating the intake of these foods, resulting in overconsumption, rapid weight gain, and chronic disease. Please note the small piece of the pie attributed to fruits and vegetables. According to the Nurses' Health Study, less than 10% of adults get even 2.5 cups of vegetables per day. So, what does optimal nutritional health look like, and how do we measure it? The American Heart Association rated diet quality using the dietary approaches to stop hypertension eating pattern on a population level, and the Mediterranean eating pattern for Americans on an individual level. The DASH, or Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension eating pattern, emphasizes vegetables, fruits, nuts, legumes, whole grains, and low-fat dairy. It's reduced in sodium, red and processed meats, and sweetened beverages. The Nurses' Health Study used the Mediterranean eating pattern for Americans to assess and monitor cardiovascular health. Here, we simply give 1 point for each group that we meet the requirement for. So 1 point if your scoring meets the condition, 0 if the scoring does not. That gives us a range from 0 to 16 points. This scoring system might look a little different than what you may have seen with other Mediterranean diet information. It has been expanded to better address the American eating patterns. If you'd like to reference it, feel free to take a snapshot of the screen. So, the DASH diet recommends 5 to 6 servings of vegetables per day. Remember, less than 10% of adults are getting 2.5 servings a day. And children are estimated at consuming only zero point 0.5 servings, meaning about half a serving per day. So we know we need to eat more vegetables. Well, do you want the most bang for your bite? Let's start here. Of all the food groups analyzed by our team of Harvard University researchers, greens turned out to be associated with the strongest protection against major chronic diseases, including up to about a 24% reduction in risk of cardiovascular disease with the intake of just 3 servings per day of green leafy vegetables. Did you know you can meet that with 1 bowl of salad? Simply start with a base of 2 cups of dark leafy greens and top it with chopped vegetables. Be sure to pair it with a fat source like nuts, seeds, or avocado. By pairing leafy greens with healthy fats, you better absorb the antioxidants like beta carotene, lutein, vitamin K, and zeaxanthin. It doesn't need to be a lot of fat. It only takes 3 grams to get the job done. 1 walnut or a spoonful of avocado. Need more reasons to eat dark leafy greens? They offer the most nutrition per calorie. One of those important nutrients is chlorophyll. Studies now show chlorophyll may help regenerate CoQ10, which is an anti-inflammatory that our body makes from the same enzymes that make cholesterol. Eating a plant-based chlorophyll-rich diet is especially important for those on cholesterol-lowering drugs, since these drugs interfere with the CoQ10 production. Sunlight and chlorophyll are really important here. After eating greens, we have chlorophyll naturally in our bloodstream, And sunlight actually penetrates our skin and reacts with the chlorophyll. And bam, we have CoQ10 naturally. Next, add 3 servings of berries per week. They may be fresh or frozen. If they're frozen, be careful to read the package labels to make sure there are no things added that we don't want, like added sugars and preservatives. Then enjoy the benefits of reduced LDL cholesterol oxidation, reduced inflammation, and improved endothelial function. What's that? The endothelial is a single layer of cells that line our blood vessels and lymphatic vessels and aid in the flow of blood. So eat those berries. Let's talk about protein. When choosing lean proteins, choose ones low in saturated fats. Saturated fats are fats that are solid at room temperature. These are the fats that clog our arteries. They are found in full-fat dairy products, meat, coconut, and palm oils. When choosing dairy, choose non-fat or low-fat options. If you choose to incorporate animal products in your diet, be careful to choose ones that you can remove the skin from, that are very lean, like the leanest ground beef you can find. Trim visible fat from cuts of meat. An even better option is to choose plant-based proteins like beans, legumes, tofu, and nuts. Have you been cutting animal products out from your diet during this 30-day challenge? Great. But are you wondering if it's sustainable and will you get enough protein? Well, yes, you can. Look at our black beans here and how much protein we can get from just 1 cup, 15 grams. What about a salad where you combine spinach and walnuts? You can get 12 grams of protein. And by getting our protein from these plant-based sources, we know that we increase our fiber intake, which provides satiety, promotes weight loss, promotes regular bowel movements, slows down the absorption of sugar, and reduces our disease risk. So, eat more plant-based proteins. Beans and legumes are also nutrient dense, packed with folate, B vitamins, and lignans. Lignans are phytoestrogens or plant estrogens and have cardioprotective effects. By the way, they can also be found in those leafy greens. They have plant sterols or phytosterols, and that's the part of the plant that is kind of the version of cholesterol that we find in animal products. Our phytosterols are our plant cell membranes that contain these plant sterols, and animal cell membranes contain the cholesterol. The richest legume sources are split peas and kidney beans. When we consume them, they actually block cholesterol from binding to sites and can help reduce our LDL cholesterol levels. They have also been shown to have anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory benefits. Our next health factor are our lipid levels. How are lipid levels measured? They are based on our total cholesterol. Cholesterol is a primary causal risk factor for the development of atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease. Total cholesterol levels in the blood are one of the primary metrics used to define cardiovascular health. It is made up of our LDL cholesterol, or I like to think of as our lousy cholesterol, our HDL cholesterol, or our happy cholesterol, and triglycerides. The LDL-C is the part of the triglyceride associated with cardiovascular disease risk and is therefore the target. Our HDL-C, or our HDL cholesterol, is inversely associated with CVD risk. So the higher our HDL, the lower our risk. This means we want to eat more foods that will help promote our HDL-C, while high triglyceride levels are associated with increased risk. Looking at lipids, all fats are not created equal. When I talk about lean proteins, I said it was important to reduce our saturated fats, like the fats found in bacon, eggs, burgers, and full-fat cheese. But what about healthy fats? We need fat for healthy nerve and cell development, healthy skin, nails, hair, and many other functions. We have to choose wisely. Let's take a look. Here we have a reference list to help distinguish health-promoting fats versus fats that damage our health. The fats we want to choose most are fats that are liquid at room temperature and contain omega-3 fatty acids. Our oil of choice is extra virgin olive oil. For high temp cooking, an avocado oil is a good option. Including omega-rich foods like walnuts, chia seeds, flax, and hemp help to increase our HDL cholesterol and reduce our LDL cholesterol. At the opposite end of the chart, we see oils to avoid. These are saturated fats, fats that are solid at room temperature. They do the opposite. They raise our LDL cholesterol or lousy cholesterol and lower our HDL cholesterol. High blood pressure is the next health factor. High blood pressure is a major risk for cardiovascular heart disease, heart failure, and stroke. The American Heart Association defines untreated blood pressure as 120 over 80. Compared with a usual Western diet, a dietary approaches to stop hypertension diet will have low sodium, which helps to reduce the systolic blood pressure. In fact, we noticed that the higher the participants' baseline blood pressure was, the greater improvement when they adopted these diet changes. In the 2017 to 2020 study, the prevalence of hypertension among those between 20 to 44 was 28.5%. And between those 45 to 64, it was 58.6%. And those over 65, 76.5% of that population was positive for high blood pressure. But the most alarming of all statistics is that 38% of US adults with hypertension were not even aware. So how do we begin to lower our sodium intake? The number one thing is eating at home and reducing packaged and processed foods. Eating in restaurants and eating processed foods is where the majority of our sodium comes from. When we are cooking at home, purchase no salt and low salt items, including low salt spices. Using vinegars, lemons, and other acids to brighten our foods can help enhance the flavors without adding salt. When buying canned products, buy them without salt or rinse them to remove sodium. Read nutritional labels and set a goal for no more than 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day. Shopping can be tricky. We read labels and they say many things. Realizing that the front of the label is not the nutrition label, there are many things on there to consider. Here are some terms that you may see when shopping. Fat definitions. Reduced fat simply means that the product contains 50% less fat than the regular packaged product. That honestly doesn't tell us a lot. But if we look at words like fat-free, it tells us a little something more specific. That means that the product contains less than 0.5 grams per serving. And even the low-fat designation tells us that there are 3 grams of fat per serving. versus a designation like less fat that simply means it has 25% less than the regular product. But the question stands, less than what? What was in the original product? Similarly, when we look at salt definitions, salt-free means there's less than 5 milligrams of salt per serving versus a designation like reduced sodium or light sodium that simply gives us a percentage. It still doesn't tell us how much. But if you look at something that says low sodium, that means there is 140 milligrams per serving or less of sodium. So be careful when you're reading these labels on the front. Turn it over and read the nutritional label on the back to be sure about exactly how much salt you're getting. Our health behavior that we'll discuss next is physical activity. The 2018 Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans recommend that children and adolescents accumulate at least 60 minutes of physical activity a day, including aerobic and strength training activities. According to parental reporting in 2020, the percentage of youth from 6 to 17 that were actually getting this 60 minutes of exercise was less than 18.9%. The guidelines recommend that adults accumulate 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity or some combination thereof, and perform muscle strength training at least twice a week. According to the Nurses' Health Study, there has been little improvement in activity levels from 2020 to 2022. The percentage reporting engaging in 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity or 75 minutes of vigorous activity was 47.9% in 2020 and only increased to 48.1% in 2022. The percentage reported engaging in strength training of at least moderate intensity and including all major muscle groups twice a week was 31.9% in 2020 and 31.5% in 2022. Even replacing sedentary behaviors like sitting, driving, riding in a vehicle, using a screen, reading a book with light physical activity can improve health benefits. So taking a brisk walk or reading a book while on a treadmill can improve your cardiovascular health significantly. According to the National Nurses Health Study, data from 2012 to March of 2020, and this is before the pandemic, among US children and adolescents 2 to 19 years of age, the prevalence of obesity was 19.7% overall. According to the same study, prevalence of overweight or obesity among adults was greater than 20 years of age in the US was 71.2%. And while the prevalence of obesity alone was 41.9%. And this was similar for males and females. A large umbrella review in 2021 found that for every 5 kilograms by meter squared, for every point of your BMI, increase was associated with a 15% increased risk for cardiovascular disease, 23% increased risk for AFib or atrial fibrillation, and a 41% increase for heart failure, and a 49% increase for hypertension or high blood pressure. So, how can I set healthy goals to attain a healthy weight? Well, set goals that are attainable. Set goals that are measurable and achievable. And here's where to start. Calorie density is the simplest approach to healthy eating and lifelong health management. It is not about a diet plan. It is about a sustainable lifestyle where we do not deprive ourselves but choose foods that nourish. Believe it or not, those foods are primarily low calorie dense foods. Did you know that people generally eat 3 to 4 pounds of food daily? The object is to focus on eating a majority of low calorie dense foods. Low calorie dense foods have few calories compared to their weight. They are foods that are high in fiber and water. They help us feel full and satiated. Each of these stomachs that you see here are filled with 500 calories of food. Let's look at the stomach filled with 500 calories of fruits and vegetables. That looks like it would keep me full for quite a while. While high calorie dense foods, like the stomach filled with oil, has a large numbers of calories compared to the weight and will not leave us feeling full. High calorie dense foods are often dry and fatty, and it takes a lot more calories to fill us up. Compare a potato chip to a baked potato. Same food, but the preparation has moved it from a low calorie dense food to a high calorie dense food. So, to lose weight or maintain a healthy weight, eat mostly low calorie dense food with a sprinkle of healthy calorie dense foods like nuts and seeds. Health behavior, nicotine. There are short term and long term effects of smoking and quitting. There's a sharp increase in cardiovascular disease risk when even low levels of exposure to cigarette smoke. Even individuals who smoke less than 5 cigarettes a day, or those who are exposed to secondhand smoke. Quitting smoke at any age significantly lowers mortality from smoking related diseases, and the risk declines with time since quitting. Did you know that 27.9% of our high schoolers and 14.7% of our middle schoolers report having used tobacco products? While 12.6% of high schoolers and 6.6% of our middle schoolers report currently regularly using tobacco products. Compared with those who continue to smoke, those who quit had lower risk of recurrent major atherosclerotic cardiovascular events, a composite of stroke, myocardial infarction, and cardiovascular mortality. So, quitting between the ages of 25 to 34, studies showed that they gained 10 years of life. People stopping it between the ages of 35 and 44 gained 9 years. Those quitting between 45 and 54, 6 years. And 55 to 64 gained 4 years. So it's never too late to start. If you need help kicking the habit, contact our lifestyle medicine department or your primary care professional for assistance. You don't have to do it alone. The stakes are too high. Health behavior, sleep. The recommendation is greater than 7 hours of sleep for adults per night for optimal health. That means waking up feeling alert, satisfied, or refreshed are all a part of measuring our sleep health. Health factor, blood glucose levels. Normal blood glucose is measured with a fasting glucose under 100, a 2 hour after drinking glucose of 140, or an A1C under 5.7. Prediabetes and high risk is measured as a fasting glucose of 100 to 125, a 2 hour drinking glucose of 140 to 199, or an A1C of 5.7 to 6.4. Anything higher has a diagnosis of diabetes. So, how do we prevent and manage? Well, we know that we want to have an ideal fasting glucose less than 100. And we can manage this with diet and exercise, following those same parameters that we use to maintain a healthy weight will affect our blood glucose levels as well. Including fiber from fruit, vegetables, and whole grain sources are inversely related to the risk of cardiovascular disease and can improve our blood glucose and lipid rises. With just a 7-gram increase of dietary fiber, we see a 9% decrease in our cardiovascular disease incidence. Risk of cardiovascular disease across increasing levels of total fiber intake are shown here on this graph. We can see moving from a 0.15 or slightly below, our risk factor there is about 1.4 for eating only 10 grams of fiber. As we increase up the line to 60 grams a day, we can see how the risk factors decrease. On a whole food plant-based diet, it's pretty easy to get more than 40 grams of fiber per day. Remember that cup of beans we looked at? 15 grams of fiber for just 1 cup of lentils. Get the food right, and the macronutrients will take care of themselves. Focus on macronutrients rather than foods, and there's a very likelihood you will end up exploring sequential ways of eating badly. When we use a whole food plant-based diet as an intervention, we can treat many chronic diseases of our time. Looking for ways to dig deeper? Here are some recommended authors. Thank you. I would love to answer any questions that you have now based on the content that we covered today or heart health in general.
Bettina, that was great. It's always so interesting to hear all the different pieces and things we need to be focusing on. I hope as people are going through this challenge, and even wrapping up on it, it's not really an end, right? It's just the start of helping people on the trajectory of continuing to focus on eating more of those whole plant-based foods. I did look at the Q&A. It looks like I think everyone was so focused on listening to you. We don't have any immediate questions. If anybody has any questions they'd like to ask, feel free to pop them in the Q&A section and we can talk about those now. If not, we will wrap up and send people on their way to enjoy their rest of their day. Bettina, any last things as you think about on the things said today or any areas where you know people tend to struggle or have challenges that people might want to be mindful of as they're trying to kind of set those goals as you talked about?
Mhm. I think sometimes we get lost in the weeds and in the details of it. Nutrition, the whole idea of eating that whole food, plant-based diet as we can see here, addresses so many issues, so many chronic diseases, not just heart health, but as you can see, striving for that good cardiovascular health score, as we will, affects diabetes, hypertension, affects kidneys, affects so many other things. So eating more plants and really focusing on those green leafies, getting berries in if you need somewhere to start, are just really good ideas. And really wanting to encourage people to make our goals attainable, to set those we call SMART goals, make them specific so that you know when you've reached them, make them attainable. You know, this challenge has been a wonderful way to kind of propel us into this idea of eating more plant-based food. So don't let what we've gained so far go just because the challenge is over. Continue to incorporate more and more of those plant-based foods. All right, I think we have a
At the
few
end of our
questions.
survey, we typically, or end of the program, we will send out a survey to everybody asking them some of the changes they've experienced. And it's amazing to just hear some of the benefits people experience with just these 30 days of starting to change their health and their diet. There were a couple questions in the
Yeah.
chat. I don't know if you want to address any of
I
those.
see. Okay, so someone's saying, I'm diabetic. I'm wondering what is a drinking glucose? So that's one of the tests that they may give you when you go see your endocrinologist. They'll have you drink a glucose liquid and then they'll measure your blood glucose afterwards. Otherwise, often you'll just get a fasting blood glucose test. So that's just a test that they use to measure your blood glucose level, or better yet, how your body is processing the glucose that you're taking in. Um, what are some sample tips for getting started? All the information was overwhelming. Yes, it can be very overwhelming. And so again, I think often we don't like to call out quote unquote superfoods, right? We're often looking for that like one bullet that's going to fix everything. But there is so much information out there. And so I say if there's just two things you can do, start with those green leafy vegetables, getting those servings in every day, and then adding in those 3 servings of berries every week. Um, any cookbooks that we want to recommend? Oh my goodness, there's so many good cookbooks out there. The Lifestyle Medicine Practice has many there at our site. I don't know. Maybe Elizabeth, do you have a couple cookbooks you want to recommend?
You know, I'm notorious for using the internet a lot of times because I'm often like, okay, I want to make this or that, and I tend to go online. I know Oshi glows are some that we have in the kitchen that we like to use. If Chef Sam was on, I'm sure she'd have a whole list because, like you said, if people stop in the downtown market teaching kitchen, we have a lot of various cookbooks there that people can look through and take a look at. So.
Mhm. Okay. Oh, I like this question. Okay, thoughts on Metamucil to get the full 40 grams for total fiber. So I say, you know what? If that's going to support you when you start your journey, great, nothing wrong with it, but not a lifestyle that we want. We want to continue to eat more foods that are going to give us the fiber that we need. It's just like when we were talking about the CoQ10 that we can get from our foods. People will often say, oh, well, should I just take a supplement? And I say, no, let's improve your diet so that you can get it naturally from food. But again, if that's where you are today and you need to add that Metamucil, then by all means do it. But slowly try to wean yourself off of it and put in more fiber-rich foods. Let's see, what else do we have for questions? Oop, I can't scroll them up.
It's nice. I see someone mentions they've made a chart to check off each day, and that's really helped them to be accountable for myself. That's a great idea. And a lot of times, like documenting things helps to kind of hold us accountable for things that we're trying to do as different goals.
Mhm.
Someone mentions, yeah, the Plant You, the Oshi Glows is great for cookbooks too.
Oh yeah,
And
there's
someone
one.
asks about, can I still enjoy fish while moving toward a whole plant food diet?
Yes, I think there are many good nutrients in it. We know that we get omega-3s from those cold water fish like salmon, trout. Um, those are good fats that we can get there as we're more and more crowding out those animal products. I kind of think about it as a crowding out, right? So we're not thinking about being deprived of animal foods, but we're just kind of crowding them out. There's just not quite as much room on our plate for those when we're packing our plates with those plant-based foods. Oh, Dr. Joel Furman and Michael Greger have cookbooks. Yes, those are good ones.
Well, great. I think Bettina, with that, we'll probably wrap it up. And the nice thing is these sessions are recorded, so people get to watch them again if they want to go back and review any of the content. And Bettina, thank you again for joining us. You've been a tremendous help to the culinary medicine team at Corewell Health. We'd be lost without you, so thank you for your
Oh,
leadership and all of your wonderful nutrition education. We really appreciate it.
thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your
Bye-bye.
day.